So this is my presentation for Biology 153, the lab portion. This is the critical assignment, and I'm doing the lab where we went over the skeletal system. My name is Ryan Curran, and the professor is Arthur Barella. And let's get started. Okay, so the learning objectives for this lab, the skeletal overview lab, were describe the major functions of the skeletal system, identify the different bone shapes found in the human skeleton, discuss the microscopic and macroscopic structural characteristics of bones, explain how these characteristics contribute to overall bone function and integrity, explain the process of bone growth and bone remodeling, and describe the supporting tissue of the skeletal system. And I won't be going over all of those in this presentation, but those are all things that we learned during that week's lab. Okay, so to start out, what are the different bone shapes? To me, this was one of the best ways to learn the skeleton, was learning that there was 4 basic bone shapes. It kind of puts into perspective how the skeletal system is made up and makes it feel a little bit less daunting than trying to memorize every single bone and thinking they're all separate, learning that they all have some similarities. So studying all the different structures of bone is necessary to comprehensively understand bone function in health and disease in experimental and clinical settings, and that was done. It comes from a source. So pretty much there's 4 main bone types or bone shapes. Long bones are pretty standard, what we think of when we think of a bone or when you see a skeleton. It includes the femur, the humerus, tibia, metacarpals, metatarsals, and phalanges. So it goes from some of the largest bones in the body all the way down to the phalanges, which are some of the smallest bones in the body. And then short bones would be, for example, carpals, tarsals, trapezium, scaphoid, stuff that are in hands and feet, not the phalanges themselves, but stuff that are generally used for a base of support and are wide and are meant to be able to connect to other bones to support them. And then we have irregular bones, for example, vertebrae, sacrum, and the mandible. So I think the most common example we would see is probably vertebrae in the spine of the irregular bones. They're all shaped somewhat similarly, but they're all different. They have different functions than other bone shapes, but are obviously extremely important. The mandible, which is the jawbone, is another good example. It's very irregular shape, and there's nothing else like it in the body. And then we have the flat bone, so the scapula, which is a picture of we can see in the photograph or the drawing, and then bones of the skull are often used for examples of flat bones. What are the major functions of the skeletal system? So this is something else that I learned, and I will be going over. The skeleton is an important organ for the support of the body and for the attachment of muscles and tendons as well as body movement. So pretty much that's saying that the skeleton is the basis for structure for the human body. Without it, we'd fall apart into just a bunch of organs and skin. It's like a building being built without any structure on it. It would just fall apart. The skeleton protects the organs of the cranial and thoracic cavities from injuries, and it houses and protects the bone marrow within its cavities. It's another extremely important function of the bones, especially the ribs, to protect vital organs, heart, stomach, intestines, kidney, all different stuff. So not only is it providing structure to hold them up, but it's also protecting them. So if somebody gets hit or punched or runs into something, instead of hitting into a major organ, they hit into the bone, and the bone can take the grunt of the force. Additionally, the skeleton has an important role as a reservoir of minerals such as calcium and phosphate. So it's another interesting thing I did not know before I took this class that I learned is the storage of minerals that the bone helps the body with. So some knowledge that I gained from this specific lab, there's a lot of stuff that I gained, so I just wanted to go over some of the main things that I took away or that I found the most interesting. So I learned that the central canal is a main passageway for blood vessels and nerves that supply bones, often referred to as the, quote, bullseye. Osteocytes are mature bone cells whose function is to maintain the bone matrix. A flat bone is defined as a bone in which the length is approximately equal to the width. I found that interesting. I didn't know exactly how to define a flat bone, but I like that definition. And then bone mass is dependent upon hormonal levels, weight-bearing exercise, and nutrition. I think that's one thing that people tend to forget about, how important bone structure is and how much our daily lives actually affect it. I think people think about nutrition and exercise and only think about gaining fat in the functions of our organs. I think people tend to forget that bones are actually affected by exercise and nutrition as well. So interesting point there. Then I learned about the hyaline, 3 different types of cartilage. The hyaline cartilage, it's the most widespread type. It has a glass-like appearance. Bone begins as hyaline cartilage and later ossifies. And I learned about elastic cartilage, which can be springy and elastic. It's found in the internal support of external things like ears and epiglottis. And then fibrocartilage has many collagen fibers and is found in the intervertebral discs and pubic symphysis. I did not know much about cartilage before doing this, so that was fascinating to learn. And then design, the biblical perspective was the main thing I took from the skeletal lab in relation to design and biblical relationship is something pretty simple. I don't have a lot to say about it, but I think it was best summed up just by looking at the entire anatomical figure of the skeletal system and seeing how almost perfectly it's designed, and without one bone in any part of the body, how it would not function properly. Even something as small as phalanges or some flat bones in the foot or the feet, without one of them, this human skeleton would not function the way that it's designed to function. And obviously see that with people who have disabilities, and if they're born with a birth defect. But it's really fascinating to kind of look at the skeleton, which is something that people see and don't give a second thought to very often, and kind of look at it and view it as this thing that has been designed perfectly to literally be the support and structure for us as human beings. And then this is the portion where we were recommended to do a video, and because I'm doing this as a video format anyways, and we didn't actually do an experiment, I figured I would just show examples of the most hands-on experimental aspect of this lab, which was labeling the skeleton model which we were given and putting it together. So I took 4 pictures here, 4 of my preferred or more favorite parts of the more fascinating parts of the skeletal structure. So in the top left I have a lot of the orbital bones that I labeled there, and then some of the spine, and then the radius and the ulna, forearm, and then the scapula, which would be a good example of a flat bone. So I tried to get some long bones, flat bone examples in there. I just wrote the experiment was done by labeling different bones that make up the skeleton. So pretty straightforward stuff, but took some time to really get in there and label and try to find where each individual bone would actually start and finish. And here are my references. And that should wrap it up. So Ryan Curran in Biology 153 Lab. And that's it. Thank you.